Mysteries abound around the world, from strange lights in the night sky to ghostly apparitions passing from one realm to the next. From the Great Pyramids of Egypt to what lies beneath the depths of Loch Ness. From Bigfoot to Atlantis, they are all mysteries waiting to be solved. Join Laurie Phillips, Lauren Smith, Graz, and Billy Simmons as they search for the truth on Night Callers Radio.
Good evening and welcome to Night Callers Bigfoot Radio. It's August 13th, 2015, and you're here with the full crew tonight. We've got Lauren, Lori, Graz, and Billy. How y'all doing tonight?
Doing good.
Awesome.
Good to hear all your voices, considering Blog Talk's just doing its usual thing.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy tonight. You know, the whole time when we were being muted, I was hearing it beep, beep, beep. I'm like, what is that?
They've changed something.
Still taking forever for the intro to start. That's so weird. The showing that's playing.
If anybody else out there is having the same problem with this, let us know.
Yeah.
See what everybody else is going through.
Probably, and I mean, if Blog Talk didn't give us problems, I would wonder what was going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, if it went smooth, something would be wrong.
Right.
Exactly.
Oh.
Exactly. So, have y'all had anything going on where y'all are?
No.
No. Hot.
It's too hot.
Yeah, you know, we got up to 106 here the other day, and what was it? Not yesterday, but the day before yesterday. That's the hottest that it has been here ever since I've ever lived here in 11 years. And lived in Nacogdoches since I've ever gotten to 106. And it was just unreal how hot it was. So, yeah.
Yeah, it was 108 here, so, ugh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's we actually got a cold front here in Tulsa, so it's been in the low 90s. It's been, I mean, just positively chilly.
Imagine wearing a coat of fur out there in the woods. Imagine a Bigfoot having to go through that.
Sorry.
You know, if I was a Bigfoot, I would just stay submerged up to my nose.
Pretty much.
Just splash water on top of my head and sit up under some, hackberry bush or something like that. I mean, I would, what is those little, you know what I'm talking about, Bill? They grow in, like riverbanks, and they look like little apples. And people make jelly out of them. Mayhaws? Yeah, mayhaws. Yeah, I'd be sitting under a mayhaw tree with my head wet and be munching on mayhaws. If I was a big fish. Yeah, mayhaws.
Steal a bucket and pour water over your head every 5 minutes.
You gotta wonder if it makes hunting easier. So, because if you hang out near the water hole long enough, something's gonna come along that you could eat.
Yeah. And how noticeable would they be? Just the top part of their head showing.
Yeah.
The eyeballs, just sitting there up under that. They probably just look like a cypress knee or something, up under there.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Has anyone seen that picture that Jeff Yellick has been passing around where it shows a Bigfoot's face?
No.
No.
Oh.
No? Everyone's talking about it. You guys are out of the loop.
I know. Out of the loop.
Out of the loop. It's actually pretty, a lot of people are fighting about it, But if Jeff does his due diligence and goes out there and does a before-after picture of it, that's actually a really pretty good face. It's just the nose and the left eye peeking over some pine fronds. And it's actually a really good picture, in my opinion.
Wow.
I don't know, maybe some people in the chat will be talking about that a little bit too. But anyway, that's it. That's my big story.
We had some excitement at my job this week. About 10 o'clock in the morning, and all of a sudden I worked at the courthouse, and we heard this yelling and screaming and carrying on, and we knew it was, because we get inmates that go up to court and they don't get the judgment they thought they would get. Some of them start acting crazy because they don't want to go back to jail, so they start pulling the lunatic cards, and that's what we thought it was. We had no idea that one of the bailiffs was escorting an inmate down the stairs, and the inmate decided he wanted to jump, and the bailiff tried to stop him, and they both went down the stairs. Oh. And all that ended up right there at our door where I work, and so we heard all of that, and there were ambulances and police, and they had the whole area cordoned off because it was a crime scene. It was assault on a peace officer, and so then, to make it even worse, back up in the county court of law upstairs, another inmate had a seizure. So you got two ambulances at the back door close to where I work, one to take the bailiff and one to take the inmate. Well, then the other ambulance driver came, and he couldn't get in there, so he had to go to the other entrance. So we had ambulances at both entrances, and this all happened like within 2 hours. So it was just insane.
You were walking around with your microwave popcorn going, oh, cool.
I was up there trying to see what I could see, Of course I was, it was one of the normal day in the neighborhood for us. But keep that bailiff in your prayers. She's still in the hospital, and it jacked him up pretty good. Falling down and everything, falling down the stairs. So, yeah, the inmate was fine. They sent him back. He was the one that was carrying on so bad, and I thought he was really hurt. He was just crazy.
And what sucks is the inmate, he just got charged. What did he get charged, like 90 days for revoking probation or something stupid like that? Yeah, and now
that's all he got.
A police officer, so now he's going to be...
He's looking at a couple of years.
Yeah, now he's going to be a real big fan of the guards, so... they walk among us.
Not to say anything about Texas or anything.
Yes. Nacogdoches area.
Yeah.
Anyway, well, I don't know about you guys, but I am super excited to hear from our guest tonight. So, Graz, you want to tell us all about it?
Well, Night Callers Bigfoot Radio presents Mel Skahan. Mel Skahan lives in Toppenish, Washington, and is an enrolled member of the Yakama Nation. Mel worked for the United States Forest Service from 1988 to 1995 in the Wind River and Mount Adams Ranger districts. He has also worked security in the past and currently works for the Yakama Nation Forestry. He has not always been a believer. He was raised in the woods by his great-great-grandfather, who would keep all of the kids in the woods all summer at his camp in a closed area of the Yakama Reservation. It was there that Mel heard stories of Bigfoot. Mel worked in Bigfoot country while working for the Forest Service. Back during those days, Mel laughed at the stories. He never really believed the stories until he got to thinking about things from the past. When he started working for the Yakama Nation, he started seeing signs of the creature: tracks, hair, smell, and even sightings. He had visuals starting 9 years ago. He went on expeditions with BFRO when he was a member. He has been on other private expeditions with close friends he has made while on outings. Mel now does all of the Bigfoot reports on the Yakama Reservation. There are only 3 individuals that listen to reports. With every new encounter, Mel's way of reporting and researching changes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Graz.
Hi, Mel. Are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
All right. It's good to hear from you tonight. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine, and thanks for having me on the program.
Yeah, no problem. Our pleasure. Our pleasure. So, God, I don't even know where to start. I mean, that awesome bio that Graz just read.
How did it all start?
I said I don't even know where to start.
How about
okay.
I start? How about
I
I
go
start?
ahead.
Welcome to Night Caller's Bigfoot Radio, Mel.
Thank you.
Shortly before the show started, Mel sent me a video of what looks to be a UFO. Now, I've been watching posts all week on the wildfires in Mel's area, and he's been posting pictures. And they've been on the fire, going to the fire line and stuff and watching things. And so anyway, during the course of this, he saw something come out of the sky, and he filmed it. So I'd like first for you to tell us about that, Mel, if you would.
Okay, yeah. This was actually filmed last night. I just decided to go up to the what they call the Cougar Creek Fire here on the Yakama Reservation, just southeast of Mount Adams, and just to observe activity, the fire activity and all, and try to get some, night shots through my night vision and everything. And as we are sitting there, notice a few planes had gone over, watch through the night vision in the distance, the planes traveling on the west side of Mount Adams. And then this plane, about an hour after we'd been there, this plane had come from the southwest part of the horizon over towards Portland, Oregon, and was traveling northeast, possibly over to Yakima, over to Spokane. And it was a prop plane because you could hear it going over. And as I'm observing and watching it go over, this bright light just appeared above it. And from our vantage point being, it was directly above us at that time. Wasn't quite sure what it was. It looked like a star at first. And so I made an observation of it, and then the plane was continuing on its northeast course, and then it was like this light had come down, the solid light object come down, and then turned to the northeast and started following the plane from above. I'm not sure if the plane had seen it or not, but that's when I grabbed my camera. It was just my camera phone, my Galaxy Note 4, and started shooting a video through the ITT Generation 3 Night Mariner, and the plane had gone off, and then this solid object that you see alone in the horizon or above us was just moving about, and then it was really bright yellow as you heard in the description in the video, and it was really bright, and it was moving fast, and there was no sound out of it. And then as it progressed towards the east, over time, it started to fade out, and to the point where it wasn't visible with the naked eye anymore, but it was visible through the night vision. And my night vision had a 3-minute timer on it. And at that point, when I was told that it's fading out, I said, I have it. And then the timer clicked in and shut the night vision off, and I rushed as fast as I could to get it turned back on to try to capture what was still up there. But by the time I got it back on and focused back up into the area, it was gone.
Oh.
And but it was pretty interesting, the fact that there was no sound out of it, and it didn't have the straightforward path that the plane was taking, and then it just moved around left, right, and then it was really interesting watching the movement and watching it through the night vision as I was doing it, and then as my daughter was watching it through just with her naked eye and going through the description. That's who you hear in the background.
Mm. Are you going to put this up on your Facebook? Or?
It's, I don't know. I usually don't put anything like that up on Facebook, not of this nature, because a lot of people will just say, oh, well, it was just this or this. And
just a helicopter or something like that.
Yeah, and when I said it to you, I figured maybe something that we could talk about, being that, you cover a bunch of different subjects and everything, and people out there listening would understand.
It was very compelling. I found it very compelling. I really did, because it really looks, the way it moves like a UFO would move. I've never seen one, but I've seen enough video footage that it definitely is right in there. And it's good, clean footage, too. So maybe you'll share it one day. Maybe you will.
Yeah, the other thing that we were going to try to do tonight was, we hear the planes going over, and there's a difference between when you're looking at this video here. You want something else to compare it to, and so tonight we're going to go see if we can capture some satellites going overhead, and then capture some jets and some prop planes going overhead too, for comparison for everybody else out there.
Okay. What about the wildfires? How close are they to where you live?
The wildfire is located near the base of Mount Adams, and boy, that's a good 2.5-hour drive for me through the forested area. And the people that are really in harm's way right now are the people that live in Trout Lake, the little town of Trout Lake, which is on the southwest of Mount Adams, and the people located in Glenwood, which are kind of like southeast of Mount Adams. So those two little towns right now are keeping a close eye, and the way the winds have been going, blowing in all different directions, this thing has been taking off on all different types of fronts, from to the west, to the north, to the east, and then pushing south. So it just depends on the hour, really, and which direction the wind is blowing. But when we were out last night, my estimation was right around 17,000 acres. So it may be a little bit bigger than that tonight.
Okay. I didn't know. I think Miss Lauren just got back.
Yeah, my phone dropped out. So I just got back. I was just going to go off my standard question of what got you into this topic of Bigfoot or paranormal or whatever you want to talk about.
Okay, yeah, we can start with the Bigfoot, and
okay.
What got me interested, well, you heard the write-up, and hearing the stories here on the reservation from, anywhere from your grandfather to your uncles, to anybody that would always, poke you in the ribs and make fun of you, and then just try to scare you. And that's where it all started for me as a kid, but, not necessarily really believing in it, thinking that, they're telling me the stories just to keep me from, running around at night, either down here on the forest or on the valley floor here on the Yakama Reservation, Toppenish, or traveling and camping up in the forested areas in the higher elevations. And so that's where it first started out. And then as I finished high school and everything, never really thought about it, because most of my life was down here on the reservation in the Yakama Valley. And then it wasn't until I started working for the Forest Service that stories started popping up, whether it had been from people out camping or from a few of the wilderness guards. And by wilderness guards, I mean the folks that go out and hike the trails and that work for the recreation department within the Forest Service, and make sure that everybody's safe and aware of all the surroundings and everything like that. And so they would come back with hearing sounds or smelling something, but the group that, I was a firefighter at the time that these stories started coming to us, and not a lot of us were believers, and so we just kind of laughed at the folks that were telling the stories. So And so that's, you know, I'd been hearing stories from the Forest Service when I first started there, especially in the Carson, Washington area. And then when I moved over to the Trout Lake area, it kind of calmed down, but it wasn't talked about like it was in Carson, which was probably about an hour and a half's drive from Trout Lake. And then it progressed from there to I'm leaving the Forest Service, working for the Yakama Nation, and 2 years after starting with the Yakama Nation in the forestry program, I had my first sound encounter with something in a deep, dark, wooded area in a creek bed that, and I always, you know, I never forget the sounds, and this sound that was projected to me about five or six times, and the first one felt like electricity, and that's what caught my attention. And, you know, being in a wooded area by yourself, you're always out on the lookout for bears, you know, different predators. And what this was I was unsure of, and the sound that I had heard was this.
Wow.
And that, you know, hearing something like that, it's running through your head. You know, working by yourself, you got to be strong. You know, you got to be able to complete your tasks and everything like that. So I just blew it off as a bear, and kept going. I kept walking to my next plot, and then it did it again. And it wasn't as long. And then finished that plot up, and then went to the third, and then it did it again, and I was like, well, I don't know what's over there. And I dropped down to the ground to see if I could see below the limbs and everything, like to get a clear view, and wasn't able to see anything. And then when I went to the next plot to measure the trees there, that projection was getting me worried. And then when the next one came out, then I said, that's it. I took the long way back around to my truck, and then I told whatever was out there that I'm out of here, I'm leaving, I'm not coming back. And then a tree was pushed over, and then I jumped in the truck, and then I took off.
Wow. What time of the day or evening was this? Morning, afternoon, evening, and what time of year?
This was about 11 o'clock in the morning, afternoon, close to mid-afternoon, and it was right around the first snows in November that this happened. And then after the event, I went down, talked to a couple of my coworkers, told them what was going on, and they immediately knew, you know, what I was talking about, and they said, no, we're not going to go out there and help you. And so I gave it like 2.5 to 3 weeks to go back in there and finish my job. I had at least another 6 hours in there to complete my task. And but I did it very cautiously. I was working as a timber cruiser, and so my job is to go out and measure the diameter and the heights of timber within the reservation. And I was working on what we call an Indian allotment, which was timbered, and it's 160 acres. And so I have to go out there and collect all this information of what species of trees are out there, how big are they, is there anything affecting them. And since there was a creek in there, I had to, you know, monitor the creek and see if anything was obstructing the flow. So there's a lot that goes within my position that I keep an eye out for to notify other departments when we're working in an area. So we share a lot of information. And so that's what I was out there doing. I was out there collecting the timber data on that particular allotment, and then we were going to assess a monetary value to it. And so that's mainly what my job is for the Yakama Reservation. So about close to 80% of the year, I'm out in the woods, and I'm loving it. I do a lot of non-work activity during lunch. If something happens, if we hear a sound or if we hear wood knocks, if we smell something or anything like that, then kind of curious about it, want to stick around. And then, if I can, then I'll go back up after work to poke around and see what's going on.
So did you end up going back to your allotment, your place, and did anything happen when you went back?
I ended up going back 3 weeks later by myself because nobody else wanted to go. And I ended up finishing my job, and nothing else happened after that. And about 2 months ago, in that same area, I have, being in forestry as long as I have, and doing this as long as I have, everybody that has any type of encounter, report, or incident, they'll get a hold of me, and they'll talk to me about it. And if it's something that they want to go back out to and look at, then we'll go out there and we'll look at it. Well, in that same area, I had 3 folks that were vocalized at, and also had a bunch of wood knocking going on towards them. And we took a look around and really didn't find any tracks. They had mentioned in their report that there were 3 trees pushed down. We ended up finding 3 trees that were pushed down, and so I'm glad that I'm at the point now where I can talk to people, unlike before, and help them go through this whole situation, because they were a wreck, and they weren't quite understanding what was going on.
Are these hikers or people that live out there? What kind of witnesses are you getting?
The enrolled members of the Yakama Reservation are the only ones allowed up in what we call the closed area, or the forested area of the reservation. And so no non-enrolled folks are allowed in there unless they are working or acquire a permit to be beyond the boundaries of the agriculture areas. And so they could be either working up there, they could either be camping, fishing, hiking, hunting, and just the regular type of activities that one would do up in the woods and everything. But it's just enrolled members only, and so that's, I guess, would be the ultimate research area for me, because I have close to 700,000 acres of timbered area that if anything happens, it's all mine. And I can, go out with them, and they can show me exactly what had happened and everything like that.
Hey, Bill, is there a question from the chat?
There sure is. Yeah. We got a question from Digger Dog, and he wants to know how many sighting reports, Mel, have you taken on the Yakama Reservation, and of what type?
This year alone, I'm up to right around 30, 35 in there, and I've had probably 4 of them that have been actual sighting, visual of a bipedal person, and the other ones are sounds that they've heard the howls, or they've heard the wood knocking going on. And then over the course of this time, we've lost count how many we had. At one point, we were keeping track, and we were well over 350, I think, as the number of reports since I started doing this.
Wow.
And
well, and would you say, yeah.
And that's all on your on the Yakama Reservation. You're not going out above beyond the borders as far as your own research.
Yeah. When I first started out, I had tons of questions. I was having the sounds being projected at me. I was having the wood knocks. I even had rocks and sticks and everything else tossed at me, not knowing what was going on. And I didn't have anybody to go to around here, because on the reservation, it's usually not spoken of. And when you do speak of it, you're shushed, or the subject is changed, and so I had to seek outside help to get an understanding what was going on with me, because it was driving me nuts. And then when I turned the internet on, you had all these different groups and everything. So I filed a report with one, and the lead investigator, or the investigator of it, contacted me, and we went out a couple of times. He took me out to a couple different places, and I got to meet a lot of people that were having the same exact type of encounters that I was having, from the same types of sounds, the same types of whistles, objects being thrown at them, even the smell being described just almost the exact same. And so that's how I started building myself up and coming to the understanding. And then coming back onto the reservation and being able to help people that way, from what I learned from other researchers out there throughout the United States, really, and been able to, assist people here and be more confident about what was going on, what I was experiencing too.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Grass. Go ahead.
That's a bit of a dichotomy, because everyone here knows Winona, and she's up in. Do you know Winona?
Yes.
Right. Yeah, she's up there in the Dakota, and she has the same problem up there. They, as a group, they don't want her researching it. Within the bands themselves, they don't like talking about it, but because they know she's researching it, they'll sneak in and tell her about little things that are happening to her, sighting reports. Yeah. They'll come, they'll give her a phone call, but they don't want, as a group, they don't want to discuss it, because there's something about it that, on the spiritual nature, it's not supposed to be talked about.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty much the same thing you're going through down there.
Yeah, I had a discussion with her. I met her once, and she was in here in the Yakama area for one of the conferences here, and we got to talk to her a little bit and understand that, basically, all the tribes seem to be the same, on the same level of not wanting too much information leaked out, or too many, us talking to a lot of different folks. And so, it's kind of hard to do that. And yet we have a radio program here on the Yakama Reservation that somebody started up, and I just showed up as a guest, and I had so many stories and so many different types of interactions with them that they asked me to join their program, and then all of a sudden we started getting phone calls from other members on the reservation, and then the ones that particularly stand out here are the ones that tell us, leave them alone. You're not supposed to be talking about it. And so
Yeah, one of the problems she ran into up there, I don't know if she told you, was that because she got known on the internet, some other people just started taking her sightings and whatnot seriously, and sneaking on the res. Mm-hmm. And that was the problem that they were running into, is that they had non-res people sneaking onto the res trying to do research.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's, you get that here on the reservation too, not necessarily for Bigfoot, but because, there are areas that they can't get onto that's, as a child you're told, don't go in there, you can't go over there, stay out of there. But what do? You go anyway, right? You sneak over there. And so, it's just curiosity of what does the other side of Mount Adams look like, and so the best way to access it for some of those folks is to come in snowmobiling or, on an ATV. And, I hear stories from tribal police and everything like that. They'll, see people come onto the reservation and everything like that, but usually escorted off. Nothing, nothing too big, made about it, unless they have rifles, which, they're not supposed to hunt on the reservation, or they have like a fishing pole or something like that. And so That's the best explanation I can come up with for people wanting to come onto the reservation, is just because it's just something they haven't seen, and there's not too many pictures of different areas, viewpoints, or buttes here on the reservation, as far as I know, on the internet.
What about spending the night out there?
Oh, yeah. You mean for an enrolled member or for somebody, a non-enrolled member?
I'm talking about you.
Oh,
you
for
ever
me?
camp out there? Yeah, like overnight.
Oh, yeah.
Happen while you're staying out there.
Yeah, we plan a few trips here now and then to go out on the reservation, and the popular areas are around the lakes and the streams, and then some of the viewpoints here. And I've been to, and I've camped on a lot of them, and not necessarily going out to attract anything, but just to go out, be with the family or be with friends, and just having a good time without trying to put pressure on anything out there. And so we're just we just go out to camp, and that seems to be the big thing, that what I've learned over the years is that you put too much pressure on something, then it's not going to want to respond to you, or it's going to move out of the area and go someplace else. And something that I have learned over the time being here and then going other places is that activity usually is not evident because of the howls, because of the wood knocking, because of everything that you're out there doing to try to attract them. Elk, like any other animal or anything else out there, they're going to get used to hearing that sound, and they're going to recognize it as not one of their own. And so we have been going silent and just, maybe do a little tweaking with the whistle, or just a single knock or something like that to see if anything is around. But mainly a lot of the outings, or the camping outings that we do here is just silent stuff, because that seems to bring things around. And if you got laughter going on, and you've got just an ordinary camping atmosphere, that seems to attract them just as much, and being as curious to want to come in and observe, and then stick around for a little while and then leave.
I can see that.
Here's a weird one. This is a question, kind of a question from the chat. Okay. I don't know if Lori saw that or not.
I thought I was going to have somebody read it, but go ahead. Yes.
Yeah, well, you met Bob Giblin, haven't you?
Yes, I have.
Right. Have you heard a story he told about a young Yakama? All it says here, young Yakama Indian having bad luck after shooting a Bigfoot. And so he broke his leg, wrecked his brand new truck, and his house caught on fire.
Yeah, I don't think I've heard that story from Bob, and I've heard probably at least 3 different stories out here on the Yakama Reservation where they've been shot at and hit. And but I've never been able to get a name from anybody, and so I just take it as that, without any other leads to go on, and it, what it is just a story that maybe down the line has been exaggerated further, with little other details here and there, because there's been a few stories that I have investigated here on the reservation, real high profile ones that have involved a lot of people, and that over the years, everybody would come to me and start talking to me about it, and then I would hear something new come out of each person that would come to me when I've actually already investigated it and talked to the lead witnesses in this, and so I'll sit and listen and entertain, and sometimes I'll correct them on a lot of things.
Yeah, it's kind of like that circle story game or something, where you just tell somebody a story, and by the time it gets around back to you, it's changed all over the place.
Right, yeah.
It happens a lot in the Bigfoot community.
Oh, God.
But I've noticed.
Mel, could you share a couple of stories with us before break?
How long do I have? I mean, I could go on forever on this.
You have 18 minutes before we take a break.
Oh, 18 minutes. All right, we'll narrow it down to the sighting one is we can go with that.
Okay, sounds good.
Working in the higher elevations of the Yakama Reservation, I was working with a partner of mine, and he was in the passenger seat, I was in the driver's seat, and we were going out looking for one of our permanent plots located in this area. And as we're driving down the road, he turns to me and says, "There's something standing back there." And I asked, what was it? And he says, "I don't know what it was, but there's something back there." And I go, "Well, what was it?" He says, "I can't tell you." So I put it in reverse and backing the truck back down the road. And then as I turn to the left, that's when he tells me, "There it goes." And I turned his direction because I was looking to the left, and I turned to the right. And what I saw was 2 steps away from a large ponderosa pine tree, right around 100 to 120 yards out in an area that had been logged, so it was open. And what we call a C tree cut. And a C tree cut is where we leave one of the dominant trees in the area and then pretty much take everything else out, opening up the area, and then letting that tree reseed the whole area, or we replant. And so it was a wide open area, no brush, just a bunch of logging / on the ground. And then it took another step to its left, and then turned, and then ran directly away from us. And I saw a black figure with an athletic type build to it, really thin. It wasn't heavy, it wasn't wide, and I saw the arms and the shoulder movement as it was running away from us, and then it turned to the right, and then I got up. That's when I got up on top of the cab of the truck, and then I could see the shoulders. From the shoulders, I could see the top of the shoulders and the head moving through the trees in the distance, and then it was out of view after that. And then I went, "Oh, my camera!" I always carry the camera with me, and
always
it was
an afterthought.
Yeah, and so I grabbed my work vest where the camera was. I threw that on, and I ran out to the tree where it was standing. And I wasn't expecting my partner to get out because of the way he was acting, but he got out of the truck, and I asked him to verify that this was the tree that he saw it standing next to, and he said, "Yeah." And I go, "Well, what was it doing when you said 'there it goes'?" And he said it had its right arm extended out, and it was leaning against the tree. And looking at us, its frontal towards us, towards the road. And then when I said, "There it goes," he said he saw it drop its right arm and then turn, and then that's when I had seen it. I didn't see it drop its arm, and I didn't see it standing with its arm extended against the tree like that. And then we went from there and estimated the height somewhere between 7.5 to 8 foot tall. And I put both hands up above my head and everything like that. And that's how we got the height estimation. And then we began to track it within the logging debris. And then I kid you not, this is not an exaggeration, at running full speed before it turned to the right, we were measuring stride lengths at 9 feet. And so we'd stick a stick in the ground and then take 2 or 3 steps and then find the next impression, and then so on and so on. And then so we were able to map out the direction that it ran, where it turned, and where it went over the hillside after it got out of our view. And that's when we didn't pursue it after that. We was just admiring, just what we had just seen, and just the enormous stride length at its full run, being up to 9 feet, and I was impressed. I mean, and then so we were given the weekend off after this sighting, and we didn't tell too many people about it, and we had to go back in to finish up our work, and we had to go over this hillside, and about a half a mile to almost 3/4 of a mile down. And so we geared up when we went back in there and started working our way down, came out to this talus slope rock outcropping area, and there was a bunch of rocks on this steep slope, and we were like, man, we don't want to walk back out of here. So we were trying to get a hold of somebody on the radio and to pick us up at the bottom, and nobody, we weren't able to get a hold of anybody. And then he gave the radio to me, and then he picked up a couple of rocks, and then he rolled them down the hill. And I wasn't able to get a hold of anybody. I gave the radio back to him, and he tried it again. And as I was looking down below us, and I don't know if you guys know percentage of slope very well, but 80% is what was 70 to 80% was what we were walking on. So it's almost pert near vertical. But we had soft soils and everything like that, and I told him, I said, there's something down there, and I go, whatever it was just took off. And I said, I'm going to go take a look and see what it was. And when I got down there to the point, it looked like something had a fight in the area. There was impressions everywhere, and then I saw further down the hill real long scuffs in the dirt that were, about 3.5 to 4 feet long, going down the hill, whereas something took a step and slid down, and then took another step because there was a space in between them, and slid down. And I was like, wow, I go, this must be an elk. And it was breaking branches on the way down. I saw the branches and stuff, and then as I kept following it, I was like, this is an elk. This is something else. And then it turned to the left. When I got down to the bottom, after about 200 yards, it turned and went left, and I was like, huh. I go, that's odd. And then I looked up, and I couldn't see my partner anymore, so I decided to go back up. And then I'm measuring the stride, the impressions, and the stride impressions, and I was like, wow, this thing was really scooting out of here. And the whole time I was thinking that it was an elk, and then I looked up above me, and I saw my partner standing up there, and then got distracted of measuring again, and then I looked up again. Next thing you know, I see him running across the slope, and then turned and started running down towards me, and then there was this rock that was tumbling down the slope. And, he come to me, and he was completely out of breath, and just his eyes were just bulging. And I go, what's the matter? He goes, you didn't hear that? And I was like, no, I didn't hear anything. He goes, you didn't hear it? I go, no. I said, I saw you run across the hill slope, and I saw that rock you kicked loose. And he says, I didn't kick that rock loose. That rock was thrown at me. And I was like, what?
Oh, my God.
Yeah, that rock was thrown at me. You didn't hear it? I'm like, no, I didn't hear nothing. He goes, I heard this wah, wah, and I looked up above me, and then I seen this rock come tossed at me. He said it wasn't rolled. I said, he goes, this thing had an arc to it, and then it landed right behind me. And I go, wow, really? And then I went running up there, and I couldn't find any tracks because it was a rock talus slope, so there was hardly any soil there. And then I just couldn't explain what just happened to him, but the sound that he had made, I was like, wow, I pretty much well understand that you had an encounter with a Bigfoot, and we had to go down the slope a little bit further to finish up the plot, and the whole time he's on pins and needles when he's wrapping his tape measure around the tree, and he's, I have to wait for him to call out his measurement before I can record it, and it took him a long time because he kept looking around. behind him, all around him, and then he would give me the measurement. And I said, "Here, take the Tatum," and I said, "I'll start doing the measurements. That way we can get this thing done and get out of here." And so we got it done, and we couldn't get a hold of anybody. So I told him, I said, "We have to walk out of here, and we have to go up." And we walked up, and he was ahead of me, and we got to the spot where everything had happened, and then started walking up again, and then he just would go off into the trees away from the rock slope, the talus area, and then go up the game trails. He goes, "What's this? What's this track?" And I would look at it, and I don't know, it looks like a bear. Then we keep going. He goes, "Well, what's that one?" I go, "That one looks like a bear too." And then he kept going up, and then at everything he was looking at, everything, he goes, "Well, what's that one right there?" And I got down there, and I looked at it, and I was like, "Oh, wow." I go, "There's your rock thrower." And he goes, "What?" And we started going up the hill. And then, I mean, just as, as fast as our two legs could take us, we were up and out of there, and we got to the truck, and I stopped, and I turned around, and I was waiting. He goes, "What are you doing?" I go, "Well, maybe it'd follow this up." I said, "I'm going to see if I could see it or either hear it come up." And he goes, "You're crazy." I was like, "Well, I'm curious." And he goes, "I'm not." He goes, "I already threw a rock at me," so he went to the truck. And so I'm waiting and waiting and waiting, and so he starts the truck up, and he's got the lights on, and he's raring to go. And then I was like, "Oh, all right, let's go." And so I get in the truck, and I'm driving us out of there, and he goes, "Mel," he goes, "I've worked with you for a while now, and, I've heard your stories. I've told you a few of my other encounters and everything like that, and you said that these things never hurt us." And he goes, "What happened back there? Why did that one throw the rock at me?" And then, so I was sitting there looking at him, thinking it over, and then just before we left, and I know what happened. I go, "You remember when we got there? What did you do?" I said, you picked up a couple of big rocks and you rolled it down the hillside, and they went crashing down, bouncing off the trees, and then, whatever else they bumped into down there, and then you took another one, and then you threw two of them down there. And then after a while, I told you there was something down there. I go, and I told you I tracked it and then hooked to the left. I said, it hooked right back above you. You were the one that rolled the rocks down because it saw you roll those rocks. And then it got mad at you and then wanted a little revenge, and so it went, wah, wah, and then threw that rock at you. And then I asked him, I go, "You got to roll any more rocks down the hillside?" And he goes, "Nope, never again."
Oh, my God.
Yeah. And so this was in the span of 4 days, from the sighting to having a couple of days off, and then coming back on the fourth day to finish working in that area. So my guess is that it was probably the same one that we observed before we had our weekend, the black, athletic looking one, with the muscular build and everything, black color and everything. So, but yeah, that's one of the encounters that I've had with coworkers and stuff like that, and
so
other stuff that
was it that actually your first sighting, Mel? The very first time you ever actually saw one?
That was the first sighting that I've ever had with them, yes. And I guess I could say aloud that thank goodness that's been my only other sighting, because having to see something that close and have that type of interaction, it's just it's mind-boggling. And if anybody out there says they're not scared, I used to say that too, and I'm afraid of something out there walking around. That the tallest one that I've recorded here on the Yakama Reservation is just a tad bit under 10 foot tall, and he's got a 22-inch from heel to toe length foot, and he's a big male, and I wouldn't want to run into these things, all by myself.
Some friends of mine got some 23-inch tracks over on the side of Mount Rainier, so they got some big boys out here.
Yeah, there's some big ones. I've heard stories of 12-footers too up in this area.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. This is a great story. I was completely enthralled. I was completely hanging on every word. I love the way you tell a story.
Well, see, that's Thank you. When I get asked to do presentations, I don't have data. I mean, I have firsthand accounts that I'd like to share and get everybody involved in. And if I'm able to walk around an audience and everything like that and share with them, just it's like you're having a one-on-one with them. I mean, that's why they're there. They're there to see you and hear what you have to share with them. And when I first started out a presentation, you're not going to have true believers out there. You're going to have skeptics and everything like that. And so, I don't try to make everybody a believer. I tell them, I says, the only thing I have here is myself. And my story of going from who you are as somebody that wants physical proof to my point now where I've seen the physical proof. I've had these encounters with them, and I'm a total believer. And if this was to happen to me back in 88 to 92 when I worked for the Forest Service, I would have been laughed at just like I laughed at them. But thank goodness for all the great friends that I've made doing this, and the folks that I go out with and just interact with now, and able to share these these stories and how like I said earlier, how the similarities of everything. No matter where you go, you have the same type of sounds, you have the same type of interactions, and it's mind-boggling.
Well, I think that we're going to go ahead and head into intermission. And when we come back, don't go away. When we come back, we're going to have more of Mel, and he's got more stories to share with us, and we're all looking forward to it. So what do you say? We head on into intermission.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back in about 6.5 minutes. Dude, I love that song, dude. Takes me back, okay, down to like Newport, San Diego.
I really love that song, and I'm sorry, I know y'all really like that roll, but I just love that saxophone. Ooh, I just love it. So.
That's okay. It was good.
Mel, you there?
Yes, I'm still here.
Okay.
Well, we did have a caller. I don't know where they went.
They bumped out. Darn it, I was just about to click on that. Well, that's all right.
It's okay.
Mel,
Storytelling.
You've been back on the res for a while.
There they are. They're back. They're back.
Well, let's see if they go. Let's see if they go with a question mark here. Oh, they're gone again. That's it. Nope. There's a question mark. All right. I'll click. Let's see what happens.
Okay.
972, you're on the air. Do you have a question?
Yeah, this is Dan from Buffalo.
Hello, Dan.
Hello, Dan. What's up?
How are you guys doing tonight?
Really good.
Great. How are you?
Oh, can't complain. I was listening to y'all's stream. I had a question that was relevant to the topic. Who was the gentleman that was speaking earlier who was telling the story before y'all went off the air?
Mr. Mel Skahan.
Okay, yeah, this is a question for him. Okay, so it's going to be like a direct question. In your personal opinion, or wait, is he still here or is he gone?
No, I'm still here.
Oh, you are? Okay, cool. Okay, in your personal opinion, do you think Hitler did nothing wrong?
Oh, for the love of peace.
He's gone.
Hey, he's our first prank caller ever since we've been back on the air. Yay! Really? Yeah, we've hit the big time.
He was actually very appropriate. I'm going to, if you're listening, Dan, I just want to thank you for not being crude. And original. You were original, but please don't do that
was a good line. That was a good line.
Yeah.
You
At
thought
least
about that one all right.
Our last sprint caller mentioned having an acid trip and watching Bigfoot do nasty things to his girlfriend. So, no, this one's really good.
Nice.
Yeah. We're hitting the big time.
And it wasn't even relevant to the subject. I'm sorry.
I
did
thought
not
it was
see
relevant.
it anyway.
Hitler and Bigfoot, yeah, no problem.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever met a Bigfoot named Hitler.
No, me neither. Harry,
Must be some of that ganja. Good. So, anyway, Mel, you've been on the res for how long back on the res, away from the federales?
For 20, this is my 21st year back, yeah.
Yeah.
And I was...
You're still kind of working with them, though, aren't you, a little bit?
With the federal?
No,
or the
the
tribal?
federal forestry services and things.
Yeah, I work with the tribal forestry program here, and this is going to be my 21st year with them.
Right.
Or finishing up my 21st year with them.
Have you ever had any of your federal friends, state and national, have you ever had any of them talking to you seriously about Bigfoot?
As co-workers, yes. And I did a presentation with Cliff Barrickman and down in the Columbia River Gorge out of the Dalles. And as I was one of the speakers listed, he had come in to be in the audience. And then after I was done presenting, he came forward and we started talking about the old Forest Service days. And then after I had left, he had an encounter and everything like that. And so, I occasionally will get to the older friends or older workers that I used to be with and come forward. It's taken a while, but, like me, you just got to have to find the right person to talk to about.
Did you ever find an official position that the Forestry Service has on Bigfoot?
No, but when I was there was no Bigfoot pamphlets or books or dolls or anything like that, but you go into some of the forestry ranger stations around here and you will see pamphlets, booklets, puppets, little stuffed animals. So, it's probably changed just a smidgen since I've been there. if they're putting that in there.
Right, kind of like a Terreso kind of a situation.
Yeah, and when I go to a national forest and want some information about some hiking trails or some camping areas, what stands out, I'll interact with them and then I'll pull up the Bigfoot question. What kind of stories do you get coming in? And some of them will, shrug the question, but then there have been a couple that have been upfront and honest and saying, well, we just got something in this area, like, say, 2 weeks ago, and and I don't think they were drinking or anything like that, and so, it's just on who you talk to and who's willing to open up to you.
Mm-hmm.
And so
I've been tempted myself. I've got a new ranger station right at my Bigfoot sighting area. Mm-hmm. I've been tempted to pull in there and have a chat with them.
Yeah. Just it wouldn't hurt. I mean, I'm sure they'll, somebody there is willing to talk. And they, when I was up climbing Mount Adams a couple of weeks ago, I ran into a couple of wilderness guards up there, and that were for the Forest Service, and I was going to ask them, and then I decided, I don't want to be the weirdo out in the woods just yet. So I'll wait.
Wait until you're in an official setting.
Yeah, until I'm under the lights. Yeah, and then
they'll be looking at each other, kind of. Yeah, you see him over there? He's
yeah.
You have an identification, sir?
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, go ahead, Laura.
Flashlight in your eye. Yeah. Oh, I tell you what, you're wonderful, Mel. I have to say that I'm really enjoying our interview with you. Do you have any other stories that you would like to share with us regarding the Bigfoot?
Yeah. I could share a similarity one. You know the sound that I did earlier. I was out on an expedition over in the Olympic Peninsula, and we were one of our things that we were looking for was along Highway 101, and so they staged us out a mile or so apart, and we would just sit there to observe and see if anything would come up to the vehicle or if we'd heard any sounds or anything like that. And I got tired of sitting there, so I said I was going to go for a walk. And I went out for a walk, came back to the truck. Then everybody was just sitting there. And this was right around midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning. And then I said, well, I'm going to go for another walk. I'm going to walk down to the next group. Anybody want to go? And then I had a guy volunteer. And so off we went and just started talking. And he goes, well, what are we doing? I go, I'm just out for a walk. I says, if something happens, something happens. I'm not going to try to, project that I'm out looking for it or anything like that. I said, the scene here is we're a couple of guys broke down along the road and we're just trying to find help. And we're just walking. And so we're talking, and I told them not to be quiet or anything like that, just interact with me. And then about 10 minutes after we left the car, that same sound that I'd made earlier, that and I just
that's so good.
I just
like
clenched my hands, and I was like, "Did you just feel that?" And he goes, "I didn't feel anything." Did you hear it? I go, "It's just right here off the side of the road, about 7 or 8 feet over to the right in the brush." He goes, "No, I didn't hear anything." And I was like, "Oh, wow." I said, all right, well, there's something here. And I said, let's keep going. Radio head to the next group, get off the side of the road. We have something, and it's going to probably follow us. And so we just kept walking and then got to the point where the other folks were off the side of the road, walked past them, and then gave it about 10 minutes, and then we walked back up to them, and nobody heard anything. And so I described what had just happened to us. And then as I'm explaining to the story, I look over at my partner there, and I told him, I go, you didn't hear anything? And he goes, Mel, I've been an air balloon pilot for the last 10 years or so, and being around jet engines, I don't hear very well. And I was like, oh, great.
Oh, no.
How could you not hear that?
And, now you know.
Yeah. And so I told him, I said, well, I'm going to walk back to the truck. And you want to join me? If anybody wants to join me going back there, come right up and we'll head on out. And, of course, the airline pilot, says, I'll go, Mel. And I was like, great. You didn't hear it the first time, which means you're probably not going to understand or hear the next go-around. And then, fortunately, somebody else in the group, we had a couple of guys now named Steve. And so I was told, I can call him Dirty Steve. And so to separate from the other Steve. And so Dirty Steve decided to tag along with us. And he's from Montana and was out on this expedition and brought in by a friend of his. And so we're off, the three of us, and I'm explaining to him on the way up where we're headed, what happened the first go-around, and if anything does happen, we'll just keep on walking and just observe what's there. And so we come up to the area, we walk right by it, nothing happens, and then we're talking to each other, and we're saying that I tell them there's a logging road up to the left. We'll go up to the logging road, and then we'll see if it follows us into that clearing. And so we get up to the logging road. We sit and we wait, and nothing happens. And we're just off Highway 101, And so I was like, all right, well, let's try something else. So I walk away from the group and I tell them, I said, I'm going to do a vocalization that I've heard on the reservation, and we'll see if we get a response from it. And so I don't know if you want me to do it or not. I usually like to include it into my presentations and everything, but
sure,
if you want me to
fine.
Okay, yeah. And so I'm going to pull the phone away from me because I get into my sounds. Whatever I hear out in the woods,
our listeners are going to love you for this. Go ahead. They're going to love it.
I learn them, and I practice them, and then I try to use them, in other places to see if I can get any responses out of it. And so this one is like a three pitch individual screams coming up, and from a female, just because of the pitch being really high. And so I walked ahead of them, and then I did this.
It's almost a high-low bass, Laura, like a gibbon call.
Yeah.
In a way. Yeah, well, go ahead. That's awesome. Yeah. Very good.
Yeah, and so the first time I did that, we got nothing. And then I said, well, let's move up the road, and I'll do it again. And so I move up the road, and I move ahead of them because I don't want to be screaming in their ears, and I let the same vocalization out. And then south from us, the woods just came alive. Whatever was out there was somewhere around maybe 300 yards out, and you could hear it take steps and crack the limbs and the brush underneath it, each step that it was taking, and it was coming right towards us. And so it started up high on this little knoll, started going through, and you can actually, if you paid close attention to what was going on, you could hear the direction that it was going, and when it turned to go around the trees and then a log or whatever, but you could hear it moving towards us. And we had a Gen 3 monocular, and we had a Gen 2 monocular out there, so we only had two for the three. And then for the three of us, so the two guys are right there in front of me, and they're scanning, and we had a full moon off in the horizon. And so we had plenty of light to be able to see anything through the night vision. And they were following it, and they could not see it for anything. They couldn't see it through the trees. And then as it approached us, I touched them on the shoulders, and I pointed in the direction that it stopped. And they were focusing in on that area, and they couldn't see nothing. And it stopped right at the edge of what we call a riparian area, where the practice for forestry is that we leave depending on the size of the stream, anywhere from a 33-foot buffer to up to a 125-foot buffer on each side of the stream. And so this thing stopped right at the riparian tree buffer right there, not coming out into the clear cut where we were standing. And they were scanning and scanning, and then you can hear and off in the distance, when we were next to Highway 101, I had my eyes closed and I was listening to this thing breathe and move, and you could hear a car coming up from the south going to the north of Highway 101. And then as that car got closer, this whatever was out in front of us that we could not see was moving back away from us. Like it thought we were surrounding it, or it wasn't quite sure what was going on. So it pulled away from us, and when that car got directly to our east and past us, the whatever was there was gone. And we never had a visual of it, just hearing it just taking the long steps as it was coming towards us and breaking breaking branches off the trees and everything. And the next morning, we had somebody go in there, and the soils being as sandy as they were, they weren't able to get any good tracks, just impressions of where it was standing. And where it was standing was below the road. We were on an elevated road in this riparian, so there were metal culverts going underneath, and so the road was built over that. And so that's what it was standing. It was below us, and we were thinking that it was at eye level or above us, being 8 to 9 feet tall. It was actually 3 or 4 feet off the ground, and so that's why we weren't able to see it.
But if they had been looking at the ground, they might have seen eye shine, or may have seen the head.
Yeah, and they may have been able to pick something up, and but we were unfamiliar with that ground because it was dark, and we never proofed the area to see what the terrain and everything looked like.
Wow, that is a great story.
Yeah, and so that's the comparisons of the two of the same sound that on the reservation, and then an 8-hour drive up to the Olympic Peninsula. The same type of vocalization.
Wow.
Well, we got a couple of questions from the chat.
Okay.
Scrolling back here. Well, this is one of our basic questions too. Looking at it from the Yakama Nation itself, what do they actually think a Squatch is?
They believe that the tall forested beings are protectors of the land. That legend has it that the Yakamas, all three of us, what we call the little people, the Yakamas and the big people, the Bigfoot, all used to live together at some point in time, and then as population started moving to the west, and then technology back then being the sparkles, the forks, the utensils, rifles, knives, all them shiny objects that the Yakamas or these three little groups of people weren't used to seeing, making its way this way. The Yakamas became intrigued, started wanting to interact with the settlers that were coming over, and then the decision was made by these three groups is that if you want to, or I got this a little mixed up. The big people and the little people turned to the Yakama and said, if you continue or want to pursue this way and live this type of life, then you're on your own. You won't be allowed to come back in. And so that's how the separation started from the big people and the little people going back up into the forested areas and living as they have, over the generations, and then the Yakamas, eventually mingling in and interacting and living that lifestyle.
This brings in an interesting angle because other reservations have talked about little people. What do you define that as?
The only way I can describe little people is just a smaller version of us. And I did a report with somebody who actually seen one about 12 years ago, and saw something run across the road, and he sped up to where it crossed, and this thing had ran up the embankment, and the embankment was about 12 to 14 foot tall on the west side or on the south side of the road. And so when he got to the point, he looked up and saw this little woman dressed in full regalia, meaning beaded outfit, the hat, and carrying a small beaded purse, and described her as looking just like a normal person, but only smaller.
Wow.
And I really haven't done too many stories on the little people. It's a very rare occasion, and so that one right there with the detail that he was talking about, the color of the hair, the braided hair. I mean, he described everything about a little woman that you would see a regular person if you attend the powwows dressed out on the floor itself dancing. And so he was, that stuff with him for a long time.
Tall this girl was, this woman?
What's that?
How tall was she?
From the angle that he was at, he probably estimated her right somewhere around 2 feet tall.
Wow.
I don't know why that freaks me out worse than Sasquatch. I don't know why. A Sasquatch can pinch my head like an olive, but little people freak me out 10 times worse than a 12-foot being.
Yeah.
So we've heard stories of little bitty Sasquatch type beings, they heard stories.
Yeah. Have you talked to a lot of people that have come across the little juvenile tracks out there?
Yes.
Like around size, 6 to 8 inches long.
Were you talking about juvenile squatch?
Yeah, just the smaller, the like the family units with the smaller Sasquatches, babies. Yeah.
Yes. Yes, we've had several guests on that talked about family units, or like a mother with their child, or juvenile tracks.
No, we've talked
babies,
about the mother and child on Billy's property.
Yes.
Got some pictures of these small prints. It would be set down, and a couple of small prints going for a little bit, and then picked up again.
And this type of work, or hobby work, whatever, lifestyle, whatever you want to call it, is you pick up on a lot of that stuff, and you kind of want to pass it on to people. And it's kind of hard here on the reservation because I've been told by plenty of the elders, leave them alone. They don't want to be bothered with. You'll never get a picture. There's a lot of no's and don'ts in there. And it almost got me to the point where I was going to stop, but I was still curious. This was at the early stages of collecting all this information, and I just didn't want to stop. And so now that I have all this information, there are people that have come to me, there's people that are interested in the lifestyle that I have, and I got one gal in particular that I've been interacting with, who has grown up learning the traditional foods and everything like that. So having her, come to me and talk to me about the traditional foods and what type of foods that the Yakamas historically gathered in what areas on and off the reservation would help me in my research to find the type of foods that you would find or collect Sasquatch reports in, and see if they coincide with the growth of those foods. And so I'm always excited and entertained to listen to her talk about where she's gone, and then try to think about if there ever had been any reports in that area, and go back through my memory of past reports in that area. And so Mary's been a real fun person to talk to for me, and kind of expanded my way of thinking now.
When's your best? Go ahead, Grass.
Well, I was going to ask if I don't know. I've never been over in Yakama during the winter. You have your regular seasonal foods and things like that, but does it snow down there?
Oh yeah, we lately, like everybody else, our snowfall isn't up to par as it has been, And but yeah, we used to get a fair amount of snow up in the forested areas and down here on the floor. And that was, it was in the wintertime when I first came across a set of tracks, a family unit, and the male was 22 inches in length, the female was 18 inches in length, and then the little one was 8 inches. And just, floored by the amount of data that I still collect as the movement of each individual person, and watching the little one move up the hillside, and as I describe, as that little kid in the family circle that has the little hash marks of him going through the playground and everything, just that pattern of a kid moving around all over the place, and then the female not being too far from the little one, watching it and advancing slowly as he's moving around, and then the male being up higher and him watching out for the female and watching out for the little one, and watching him move from tree to tree and scanning forward, moving out from that tree, moving to the next tree, and then scanning forward. And when he felt comfortable enough that nobody was in the area and that everything was okay, then all three of them met up, and then they moved up this live stream, and then that's when I quit following them. And I still think about it to this day, of the movement of all three of them. And then later on, when I walked out of the area, I found a bedding area that they had been living in for a good long time, where they pushed the snow out. And this was probably about 8 foot wide by about 15 foot long. And they pushed the snow up, and they made they rested their body on the mounds on the outsides of this bed. And I remember running my hands over this ice, because that's, from the body heat and everything, and feeling the individual hair pattern, or the hair pattern as the snow became ice, and seeing all the three tracks inside this bedding area, and then seeing the three tracks move about outside the bedding area, and I kept wondering why they were there. And as I was sitting there in that bedding spot, there was a logging truck that had gone by, and I could see and hear it go by on the road. The road was plowed, and that was the only road that was plowed at that time. Nothing to the north and nothing to the west, just to the south of them. And so I hung a ribbon up right there at that bedding area, and I walked to the road, and then I looked back, and, if you were a person driving 20 miles an hour, there would have been no way that you would have noticed or seen that these three beings here were living in that spot. And
they were completely out of sight.
Yeah, completely out of sight, and completely comfortable knowing who was going in and who was coming out.
Wow.
Now, was that a full-time snow line, or just snow at that particular time that would have melted after a while?
There was anywhere from 1 foot to almost 2 feet of snow in that area. 1 foot being up in the high, the exposed flat area, and then 2 feet when you got into the drainage.
I was just curious on this side of the Cascades up here about whether or not the snow actually pushes them down, because we get a lot more sightings in North Bend. When the snow line pushes them down, it pushes the deer down, pushes the elk down a little bit, and they follow the food. I was curious if it happens on that side too, and if you've noticed that kind of thing.
Yes, this was right around the 3,000 foot elevation, and the valley floor. The valley floor being, if you were to walk out, probably about 5 or 6 miles, and if you know anything about the Yakama area, we can grow anything from hops to potatoes to onions to apples. Pears, cherries. We have it all here. And during those harvest times, when, say, the onions are pulled up out of the field and bags will be missing. Trails of onions will be, headed back up to the foothills, or the apples will be picked to like a 9-foot height, and anything above 9 feet, whatever they couldn't reach, was left. Same thing with dog food left out on the porch.
Right.
Sleeping in barn areas. People seeing them down here by the golf course in Toppenish. People seeing them up at the gap in between Union Gap and the lower valley. I've got reports of tribal police getting called up to numerous places to investigate sounds, investigate smells, and so yeah, they're opportunists around here, and they know when the season's of a harvest time, and so they'll come down.
Yeah, a lot of people say that you don't really have to go too far to see a Bigfoot during certain parts of the year. They're going to take advantage of any farmland that's down there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. And in the wintertime, it's just when and where. And I know my partner's wife, if she's listening, doesn't like me talking about this story, but him and I would go out and reports and collect, talk to people, go to the places, investigate, look around, tracks, everything. And his wife was a huge skeptic. You guys are just two crazy old men, and if you guys believing in Bigfoot, you guys need to grow up and blah, 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 hearing all this skeptical talk out of her. And so one day, or one early morning, she was working in Yakama at the time, and happened to see one running across the road, and then eventually running up the ditch line, and then running up the ditch line, and then jumping onto the railroad tracks. And then she rode right on by it, looked at it, and it was keeping pace to her at about 25 miles an hour, and then got away from it. It wasn't chasing her or anything like that. It was just trying to, probably avoid her or cross the tracks or something of that nature. And about 20 minutes after that encounter, my partner calls me up and says, "You're not going to believe who just had a Bigfoot sighting." And so he told me all about it, and then we went out there, and we actually found in the frozen ground a 16-inch track. And so now, if any talk of Bigfoot or anything like that comes about, she's the residential expert, because she'll see a picture that somebody or a video that somebody posts, and they don't look like that. That's fake.
all of a sudden, she's the expert.
Yeah, she's the expert.
Yeah, that's all right. Her husband got the crap scared out of him a few times, and all of a sudden, she's the expert. That's cool.
Yeah. So I've had an interesting. I've loved the life that I've lived so far, and hope this continues, and eventually somebody will come along to come and tweak my brain, and I'll share everything out and take them places. And I've tried that with my youngest child, and she's getting in that tween age now, and so Dad's not as interesting anymore. So
she didn't want to go out and do it with you?
No, not anymore. We were out about 3 weeks ago on an outing where we had a lot of interaction, and she was sitting there right next to me and pointing out that she heard a whistle here, and we heard another response whistle over here, or we heard something walking around the tent over there. And it was funny because we had just turned in for the night after all this had happened, and three of us were sitting in the tent, and then we could hear something walking, and then we hear this, and so the girls were like, "Who farted?" and we were looking at each other like, "What, me?" And so I just heard something outside walking around, and then so I mean, there's all kinds of crazy things that go on out there. But I think that's the actual.
You ever take them out on some of those BFRO things?
When she was younger, she was a regular, and everybody knows her, and they a few of them still ask for her, and want to know how she's doing and everything. And so yeah, she has. We haven't been on one in a while. just the private stuff that we get invited to, and kind of avoided the bigger expeditions now.
So what do you think of how, well, I don't want to get controversial. You still know a lot of the BFRO guys. How do you consider their method of doing things? Like when Matt has these really big organized hunts that actually don't produce anything except maybe a couple of sounds here and there.
Yeah, and the sound story that I told you I was on, that was one of the expeditions that I was on, was for the BFRO, and you get a collective of a group of people like that in a short period of time. You're looking for anything that snaps a twig in the woods, and so you get a lot of that. You get a lot of people that were first timers out there, and that kind of obstructs the data of what you're trying to do out there. And but,
who's knocking to who? Who's calling to who? I was curious about when you made that one call, whether you warned the rest of them that you were going to be making that call.
There was nobody else around when I made that call. We were right at that half-mile point, and everybody was still at their vehicles. And protocol on expeditions and stuff like that is if you're going to produce a sound, then you let the group know. And we were by ourselves, and there was nobody else around, and so a call was not made to anybody else before that. And I don't think anybody else had heard that, because I didn't get any radio calls of. Because usually when somebody hears a sound, the radio comes alive. Did you hear that? It came from over here. You've probably been there and heard all that. And but none of that happened that night.
Actually, I've never been on one of those organized hunts. I never thought that, because I know so many people in BFRO. I never thought it was right that I would have to spend $300 just to see my friends. But me and Matt went back and forth on that several times. But
I never got into the money thing. I was invited as an experienced member of the group to help others, and I never expected to be paid for it or treated any different. And so to my knowledge of looking back at everything, becoming really close friends to a lot of the higher ups and everything else like that, which I really loved. That's just about the experience, or what I was paid was in friendship in return over all these years. And
it's gotten a little bit controversial over the years. Some of those big hunts. And each story that I've collected, getting away from the organizations, I haven't been part of an organization for a good, it's been a while, about 8 years now, I think, is the last time I was with an organization. And but learning everything on the reservation from the reports that I collect here has strengthened my knowledge about everything. And I'm glad that people are willing to talk here who, in this type of environment, are told not to talk about it and share everything with me. And what I want to get into now is something that recently happened to me. And you guys cover the paranormal, and you cover all different aspects of the subject. I attended a house cleaning. There was a spirit inside a house that was disrupting the family life, and a few folks were called in to try to get the spirit to leave, and it worked for a while on the first group that had gone over there, and the second person that had come in, he was a very powerful person from the mid portions of the States, and they called him in with his family to assist this house, and so he laid out the ground rules for us
there was about 20 of us that were there, and there was a offering of gifts for the witnesses that were there, and then there was an offering of food for everybody to feast, and for the other beings that were called in to help. And so he set everything up. We were sitting on the floor, and so there was no room in the middle of the floor for anybody to move around. So once we sat down, we were there, and everything had to be blacked out. There was no type of light allowed in, so there was black plastic over all the windows, blocking out the street lighting and everything. And then he started with what's going to happen here tonight is that we're not going to drive this spirit that's in this house out. What's going to happen is we're going to invite all the spirits outside the house, inside the house, and they will help guide this spirit that's here out away from everybody, out away from this group. And what you're going to hear chanting, you're going to hear screaming, you're going to feel something dancing on the floor, you're going to hear a lot of different things. You may even hear past relatives come to you and start talking with you. And don't be afraid. If you're afraid of the dark, I'm encouraging you right now to leave. And so nobody got up and left. Everybody was willing to assist this family. And so cut the electricity out, let every bit of light fade out before the ceremony started. And so he started drumming and started singing. And now, you got to remember, we're sitting in pitch black, and we're all up against the walls of the living room area. And when he starts his second song, that's when you started hearing different voices. Well, from my personal experience locally, I started hearing different voices. I started hearing high-pitched voices, I started hearing whispers, and I started hearing low voices. And
wow.
I sat there.
You're sure it wasn't the other people that were there with you, right? You're sure it wasn't them?
Yeah, I leaned over to the person next to me, and I was like, are you saying anything, or are you hearing voices above you and around you? And I was told yes. And I was like, good, because I thought it was just me. So I sit back, and he's chanting, and all of a sudden you hear this, ah! And then you would hear all these other things going on. And then when he got to the third song, there was something dancing on and stomping on the floor. I remind you, there's no way anything could be stomping on the floor in front of anybody, because 80% of that room is being taken up by either gifts or by the food that's going to be eaten later. And so it's almost impossible for anything to be jumping around on the floors, but something was jumping on the floors in front of me. And I'm sitting there and I'm listening to this, and I feel this vibration start up from the floor, and it's just, whoa, and then it moves into the walls, and the walls start shaking. And then I went over to the person next to me, and I was like, are the walls shaking, or is it just me? And he go, oh, the walls are shaking. And I was like, good. I'm not experiencing this alone. And so the vibration went up the wall and then up into the ceiling. And I have looked in every single angle of this, how this was done. Is this house rigged up for this? And there was no way that this house was rigged up for vibration, shaking, bouncing, or whatever. And so everything stopped vibrating, and then off in the distance, I hear that voice again, this, and I was like, I know that sound. I've heard that sound before. And I go, you're, in my mind, I didn't say it aloud, I go, if you are a Bigfoot, you'll whoop for me. And then I heard this,
oh my God.
And I was like, okay, you're here. And I'm trying to figure out, how are you here? And so the dancing, the stomping that was going on in the middle of that room was from the Sasquatch spirit that was there. And
wow.
I mean, it was, I don't know if you can hear that or not, but that's how loud it was.
Wow.
And I'm not sure if you could hear me stomping on the floor. And he finished up with a couple songs after that, and then the lights came on, and then people, started whispering about what had happened. I heard somebody say that one of their sisters came to them who had passed on years ago. I heard somebody over here on the other side of me say that an uncle had come to him and was talking to them, and the person sitting next to me asked if I was squeezing their hand, and I said, nope. I said, my hands were folded right here in front of me. I wasn't squeezing anybody's hand, and so
wow.
So during this during this free time, everybody got to talk amongst each other. The lead person was saying that the spirit that was in the house is now gone, that it's outside, and that the family that lives there is going to be okay. And he goes, but I've got something else. I need to talk to somebody here, and it's you. And he pointed right at me, and he says, you, on the other hand, you have something here that visited me once back. And he started going into how Sasquatch in their area, in the area of Oklahoma, when they have their ceremonies or out in the wooded areas, come to them and watch as they perform as like a protector for them. And then he goes, you violated that. You've got something you took out of the woods, and he wants it back. And then somebody over to my left yelled out, you've got hair. And I thought back to years ago when I collected a hair sample off a nest that was built by one of them. And I put those hairs in an envelope, and I just kept them at my work desk. And and I said, yeah, I do have hair. And then he began to talk to me about it. He goes, this being, he came to me and says he doesn't want to be known, and that he's afraid that what you're going to do with that hair is send it, and somebody will know about him, and he doesn't want that, and he wants it back, and that if you don't give it back, then another level of I don't know, of pursuance of me is going to escalate, and that eventually, if he can't get to me, then he's going to move on to my family members. And so he goes, whatever you've collected, you need to send it back. And I'm going to talk to you away from everybody and what the procedure that you need to go through in order to complete this and be right with him. And so, I listened to him very carefully on his instructions, and did everything to precision, the way he wanted me to do it. And so I remembered where I collected the hair. I eventually collected all the items that I would needed to complete this ceremony. And when I completed the ceremony and then offered its hair back to him and placed it down in where I was supposed to, and turned, did my prayers, and then as soon as I was finished, packed everything up And then I said aloud, I said, are we okay? Is everything done the way I was supposed to? And then not expecting to hear anything. I would say within 10 seconds after saying that, I heard this, whoa! And I was like, oh, okay. Is that a yes or a no? I don't. Yeah. Yep.
That
and so,
is an awesome story.
And so, like I said, the level that I am at now is that, I never believed in the telepathy or to be able to read thoughts or anything else like that, or just knowing that it's a human, a solid human.
Mm-hmm.
And then now expanding out to that, the thought process that if somebody in their spiritual mind can connect with these and then come to him and then tell him that we have a problem with somebody here and we need to correct it.
Wow.
And so that's changed my whole thought process on this subject.
On everything, yes.
Yeah, on everything. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Well,
Yeah,
Mel, we have run out of time, sir.
Oh, okay.
We have run out of time. We have less than a minute. And I just want to thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah,
well, thank you for inviting me, yeah.
We're going to have you back.
Yes. I'll say, Part two.
Whoop, whoop, huh? Yeah. If you can fit me in the schedule sometime down the road, I'd love to come back.
Oh,
Definitely.
we'd love to have you back. We would love to have you back. But for now, you've got to say goodnight, everybody.
All right, good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you, Mel.
Thank you, Mel.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Mel.
Mm-hmm.
Good night.
Bye.
Good night, everybody.
See you next Thursday.